G'day and welcome everyone. My name is Nick Johnston. I'm the principal here at Bishop Druitt College and your MC this evening. We're honoured to be able to host anything at the moment, quite frankly, after COVID. So welcome back to the campus if you've been here before, and welcome if you haven't been. This is our first official event for the Clarence Coffs Independent Schools Career Hub. So I will do quite a few thank yous later, but I wanted to start with a thank you and thank our wonderful string ensemble and Mrs. Sandra Smith. So please put your hands together for the students. That's Holy Strum. Thank you very much. And I'll ask Mrs. Karen Lyle, the principal of Clarence Valley Anglican School, to do an acknowledgement country. Thanks, Karen.
We acknowledge the land and fresh water and salt water of the First Nations people on which we are gathered, and the carers of the land, the Gumbaynggirr people. We also acknowledge our other local nations, the Bundjalung and the Yagal, and pay our respects to the elders of our First Nations people, past, present and emerging. We recognise that under the concrete, this land is, was and always will be sacred to the First Nations people.
I've got a few introductions. I'm not going to go through every single person that's in the room, obviously, because we're all VIPs in here, because we're all people that are making a difference in our community. So thank you for making the time. But I did want to recognise some people that are key members in the Careers Hub. So if I mention your name, can you wave from where you are or stand up so people can put a name and a face if they don't know you already? Daryl Buchanan is the Associate Chief Executive Officer of Operations. Where are you, Daryl? Over there. Everyone can see Daryl over here. We've got Kelly Borg from AIS as well. She's the Head of Teaching and Learning, and Kelly's going to speak to us this afternoon. Thank you for volunteering, or maybe someone volunteered you, Kelly. We've got Michael Bignell, the Assistant Head of Projects, and Michael's been our team leader for this project, so thank you very much, Michael. You've done a great job already. You've already met Mrs. Karen Lyle, the Principal at CVAS. We've got Mrs. Tanya Hewish, who's the Careers Advisor at CVAS, who's not here yet, but she'll be here soon, I'm sure. We've got Mrs. Janelle Rowe, who's the Principal at St Andrew's Christian School in Grafton. Where are you, Janelle? Over here. Thank you, Janelle. And her Careers Officer is Paul Schilling. Thank you for coming along too as well, Paul. And my Careers Officer, you probably met at the door, is Gina Driscoll. Gina is a gun, an absolute gun, and she's also the current High Achiever for the careers in New South Wales and the ACT as well, and that's well deserved. Go on, give them all a round of applause, please. I'm going to invite Kelly Borg to the stage, and while Kelly's making the way up, I'm going to give Kelly a rap. Or are you going to do it from there, Kelly? No. Kelly's the Head of Teaching and Learning at the Association of Independent Schools New South Wales, and I know she's passionate about helping students find pathways and supporting schools, because Kelly and I are also on the Vocational Education Committee at state level for the independent schools, and I know she works very hard in just that little part of her role. She has a glorious career, which I know is Queensland, New South Wales and the UK. I know things, Kelly, I know things. I've done my research, but she's very passionate about pathways for kids, whether that be directly into the workforce or through the TAFE system or through other training organisations and even tertiary areas. So I'll hand over to Kelly. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nick, for that very warm welcome. It's really lovely to be here, and we're very excited. I'd like to begin by paying my respect to the traditional custodians of this land and extending that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are here tonight. Patrick. Oh, I'm so bad behind the lectern. My name's Kelly Borg. I'm a team leader at the Association of Independent Schools of New South Wales, and we have the privilege of being a member association and peak body for almost 500 independent schools across the state. This afternoon we're very excited to be here collaborating closely with 3 of the schools local to this region for the launch of this fantastic work that Nick and his team have invited you to attend this afternoon. The 3 schools that we're collaborating with, St Andrew's Christian School, Clarence Valley Anglican School and of course Bishop Druitt, have been involved with the AIS since the end of 2020, around the end of 2020, the year that we all would like to forget. And we're excited to be here today for the official launch of the work of the Clarence Coffs Independent Schools Career Hubs. The purpose of this career hub focuses or centres on young people. The goal is to bring schools within a region together to connect schools with local business, with industry, with post-school education and employment providers. Oh, so much better, thank you. And ensures that young people within the region have access to every opportunity for their post-school options. We really want to support schools in these career hubs to be able to identify employment and career challenges and opportunities within local communities and co-develop local initiatives which support young people. So that's why we're here this afternoon, and we're thrilled that you could join us to be part of it. Across the state there are 3 such career hubs. There's one here, there's one in the Albury Wagga Wagga region, and there's one in southwestern Sydney. We'd like to thank and acknowledge the Australian Government for their support in this area through enabling this work through the choice and affordability funding. We know that young people, when they engage with the community beyond their school experience, are blessed with many positive outcomes. This kind of engagement can lead to greater confidence. It can lead to better decision making about study and post-school career options. It can lead to the development of transferable skills like teamwork, like collaboration, like problem solving, like entrepreneurship. And it can lead to increased employment, apprenticeship and training opportunities. We also know that these types of partnerships are most impactful when they're mutually beneficial and they bring benefits to the schools and the students that they impact, and also to the businesses and organisations that they partner with. So we'd really love to talk to you this evening about ways that you can be involved, and we'd like to hear from you about your thoughts on this type of work. You might notice on your table we've left some QR codes, and this afternoon we're not asking you to check in for a COVID-safe reason, but we're asking you, if you wouldn't mind, if you'd like to connect and be part of this work, to scan the QR code and connect your details, and one of our team members would love to be in touch with you. Today we're excited to be here for this launch, Nick, and we'd like to extend our thanks to you, Principal of Bishop Druitt, and to all of the team that has enabled this event to happen. Our vision is to establish self-sustaining hubs around New South Wales, and we couldn't be happier to be kicking this event off in this part of the world. So thank you very much.
I know you're not here to listen to me, we're all here to listen to Mark, but I just want to tell you what the Careers Hub is all about, because you probably haven't had a chance to hear what it's about yet, to find out whether you want to be involved. So I'll give you a bit of a blurb of what it's about, and then if you'd like to be involved, as Kelly said, there's QR codes on the table. You'll be sent a survey, probably sometime next week, which will ask you those questions. Would you like to be involved? How would you like to be involved? Those kind of things as well. If you don't want to answer the survey because you get 400 emails about it, that's okay, I understand as well. Okay. So what is the Career Hub? The Clarence Coffs Independent Schools Career Hub is an initiative of those 3 schools and the Independent Schools Association. The aim of the hub is to partner with you guys, the employers, with training institutions, with tertiary institutions, to ensure that our local young people experience the world beyond school while they're still in school. We all know that the success rate of students post-schooling is helped if they have a positive schooling experience and they have pathways and steps to get to their next level of career. And you can be part of that world experience. There are many benefits to businesses to become partners with the Career Hub program, and I'll list a few, but I'm sure you can imagine some. The opportunity for you to gain access to a larger pool of future employees. I'm going to quickly survey who's advertised in the room but hasn't been able to find the quality of employee that you're looking for. Come on, I'm one of them too. Yep, look around the room. Probably half of us put our hand up. Wouldn't it be good if we could train some of those people here in town, or in Grafton, or in Yamba, or in Nambucca, look after them in this area, get them repaired, and here's a crazy idea, they stay. The opportunity to help train the next generation within your field and build the skills you want in them, to keep local talent local, and also to foster a positive community image for your organisation through the demonstration of genuine social responsibility. How nice is it for your businesses to put out there on your Facebook, social media, how you're helping? That's a nice, good news story for your business as well. There are many ways that a business or an organisation can partner with the Hub, but they're not limited to these ideas that we come up with as a group. Industry tours, guest speakers coming into the school, could be skills development workshops. We were talking to someone that's booked before, done before, about mentoring, work experience opportunities, internships, school-based apprenticeships, and traineeships. Just going to spend another minute or two just talking about the possibility of internships at the Year 10 level. So they haven't made their decision of what they're doing in Year 11 and 12 yet. They haven't thought about whether they're going to TAFE yet. They haven't thought about whether they're going to university yet, or directly to the workforce. An intern could be in your workplace for half a day or 1 day a week for 20 weeks. They could be working on a project for the first 10 weeks, getting to know your business. How does it work? What are you looking for? What skills can we build in them? The last 10 weeks, you give them a project that benefits your business, and they can report back to you on how they could benefit your business going forward, or any job you ask them to do. The good news is our school insurance covers that in the workplace. That's a bonus. You don't have to pay them. That's a bonus. Okay, but you're building those skills as you go. We also get an opportunity for you to report back with that trainee back to the individual schools and to the AIS, which gives promotion of your business and your organisation in those school communities. We have 735 families at Bishop Druitt College. That's just one of the 3 schools. They all work somewhere. They're all linked to some organisations. They all play sport or are involved in music groups or other social groups. They've all got friends. They all go to barbecues on the weekend, don't they? Wouldn't it be good if they were going to those 735 different things and talking up your organisation and what a great job you're doing for that student in your business? All of us can imagine different ways of the potential for this particular initiative going forward. Okay, let's just think about one kid. Now magnify that or amplify that by 40, 50 or even 60 times every year. We could really do something special in our communities. What I'm asking for is your commitment to be involved in helping the Coffs Clarence area. That's what I'm asking for. Okay? I know we're all busy. I get it. I'm busy too. But we can look after our kids, we can look after our region together. This might be the answer for some of our region going forward, and you could be part of that solution. Enough about me. Let's talk about Mark. Before I give my bio for Mark, I've got a couple of housekeeping things I need to mention. If you would like to get up during today and go and get an extra drink or some extra food, you can move around, that's no problem. And at the back of the Branson Centre, the bathrooms are there, located at the back, but you can speak to staff if you're not sure where you're going as well. We are recording today's presentation, we're taking photos. If you don't want to be involved in the photo, if you just let Catherine know and she won't take a photo of you, that's fine. Okay, that's our housekeeping out of the way. It's not going to have a fire, we're not going to have a flood, we don't need to talk about that, it's all good. But if so, please follow the directions of staff. My honour today is to invite Mark McCrindle to the lectern as our keynote speaker this evening. I've seen Mark many times at different functions around Australia. You're going to enjoy this. Mark is a social researcher with an international following. He's recognised as a leader in tracking emerging issues and researching social trends. As an award-winning social researcher and futurist, Mark has appeared across many television networks and other media. I've seen him present at a whole range of forums when he's talking about education-based things, but of course his field is much wider than that. He's the best-selling author, he's an influential thought leader, he's a TEDx presenter, he must be tired, principal of McCrindle Research, his advisory, communications and research company McCrindle count among its clients more than 100 of the top companies in Australia and their leading brands. Please welcome Mark to the lectern.
Thanks very much, Nick, for that introduction, and to Bishop Druitt College for being one of the schools to get on board this careers hub, and for Clarence Valley Anglican School and St Andrew's Christian School as well. What a great group of schools coming together for this excellent initiative. And I want to thank AIS New South Wales and Kelly for her introduction, Michael and Daryl for making this careers hub possible. I have the privilege of sitting on the board of AIS New South Wales, and I get to see firsthand what an incredible organisation that is. And the future of independent schooling in New South Wales is in excellent hands with AIS New South Wales as the peak body. And this Careers Hub is just one of the many initiatives, innovations coming out of AIS. So it's great that we can all be here for this. And I just want to, in the time that we have, do a bit of a horizon scan. Think about the emerging generation that are easing out of school and into employment. Think about the key trends that will transform the future of work. And also think about what will transform the context in which they are working and our organisations are running. Well, when we were at school, most of us here, I see a lot of fellow Gen Xers, it was a different era. Many of us here in the room were at school in the 1980s, and in the late 1980s, the world, like now, was also changing dramatically. The Berlin Wall was coming down, the map of Europe was shifting before our very eyes, the USSR was coming to an end, the geopolitics of the world were changing. And in that context, in the late 1980s, the US military came up with a term to just describe the speed of change that they were seeing before their eyes. And they came up with this acronym called VUCA, and that stands for, just put it up here for you, they said it's a VUCA world, and the V stands for volatility, and the U for uncertainty, C for complexity, A for ambiguity. That defined the era of the 1980s. But of course, the speed of change has accelerated since then. In fact, just 3 years ago, at the World Economic Forum, the Prime Minister of Canada uttered these words. He said, "The pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again." Interesting way of expressing it, that there is an acceleration of change. And if we think that there's a lot of change now, well, it's not going to slow down, there'll be even more to come. Think about even new words that have entered our lexicon in the last year, and that tells us something of the speed of change. It was February last year that this pathogen became obvious, and this term COVID-19 was coined. We started using it and have been, unfortunately, ever since. By the time we got to March last year, social distancing, the term, entered our lexicon, and the concept became practice. By the time we were in April, lockdown was a new term we were using. By May, around this time last year, super spreader was a term that emerged, and none of us wanted to be guilty of starting a super spreader event in any way, so we all complied with those various health directives. But probably the word of 2020 that really sums up what we've experienced in the last 12 months was unprecedented. In fact, we've seen unprecedented use of the word unprecedented, so that tells us a lot about these crazy times. In fact, I saw someone on social media say, don't know about you all, but I could really do for some precedented times right now. We all just want to get back to precedented times. But that tells us something about the acceleration for decades, but even more of recent times, of the trends, of the global confluence of events, and therefore something of the future as well. We surveyed Australians last year, and 57% said that 2020 was the most difficult year of their life. That's pretty challenging for a nation, and that was the year that we had. And yet, we saw Australians be resilient. We saw about this time last year, anxiety was the number one sentiment. By the time we got to the end of the year, hopeful was the sentiment, which still is there. Although an emerging sentiment we're seeing at the moment is frustration with the various lockdowns and challenges. But we got our way through it, and these were the two waves that we saw nationally, and it's been nearly 7 months now since we wrapped up that second wave, and particularly as we look around the world, we really do feel blessed at the situation that we are in here in Australia. Nonetheless, it has created some challenges. Now, the challenges, fortunately, haven't been health challenges as much as they've been social challenges, plans that have become frayed, and indeed isolation, social and mental health implications from all this. 87% of Australians in our survey, as we were getting through the year of COVID, I put that one up, just thinking about the resilience and finding the positives in the tough time. Now's a good time to take up ventriloquism if you wanted to give it a go. I put up this slide here, sorry, it's not showing for some reason, just highlighting now that the 7 months since we've had the worst of it. And I guess it's just a reminder that while there is uncertainty, we as Australians got through a lot, and resilience certainly has been the number one attribute that Australians have demonstrated through this year. Well, let's think about what has changed as a result, and I guess what is here to stay. You know, much of what we had pre-COVID we won't see again. We're not just moving back to a pre-COVID world, but it's this world where the realities have set in, and where things won't return to what we knew pre-February 2020. Demographically, we've seen some changes as well. Now, the last few decades, the population growth of Australia has been pretty phenomenal. And you can see, well, here's 2 centuries of population growth, but the last decades, the angle of that increase has been tipping up. In fact, we've seen record annual increases, particularly in the last decade. However, we've now had closed borders for a year, and 2/3 of our population growth over the last decade has come through net overseas migration. So what does this mean for our future? And a lot of our population growth was leading to some economic growth as well. So where is that placing us? Well, we were seeing about 230,000 net increase through migration per annum. And that was the number, as you can see there, that was set forward for the next decade or so. But along came COVID, closed the borders, and for the first time in more than a century, in the last 12 months, we saw more people leave our shores than come to our shores. We ended up in this period of net emigration. The last time we had more people leave Australia than come to Australia was in 1916. And just last Sunday, we were all reflecting on Anzac Day, weren't we? As those soldiers headed off to World War I. In 1916, we saw in that year more people leave Australia than come to it. That's how far back you've got to go to see similar figures. Now, is it going to bounce back? It is, but it'll take the best part of this decade to do so. So we are in a bit of a slow growth period for a while. I put the chart there, which just highlights that returning growth. So at the moment, we're at 25.7 million people Doesn't mean that we're not going to grow, though, over the next decade through natural increase and that net migration, which will get back to some level of normality over the next few years, as you saw. We'll end up in a decade's time at about 29 million people. So that's still some pretty significant growth that we will see, and that's based on the current COVID modelling and the realities that we have at the moment. But while our population growth is modest and will be for a decade, and while there's not a lot of net overseas migration, what there is massive amounts of at the moment is internal migration. In fact, in this decade ahead, we will have more internal migration, more mobility of Australians than we've seen ever before. In fact, I put up here some of the key reasons for it. And the key beneficiaries of the internal migration will be regional areas. And you're already seeing growth in population in Coffs Harbour and Grafton and all the way up the coast. We're going to continue to see that sort of growth for these reasons. The regions of Australia have had far better affordability than the cities, and even though we've seen house prices locally go up pretty significantly, the affordability is way above what you get in the capital cities, particularly Sydney and Melbourne. In addition, you've got livability and lifestyle of the regions. It's always been an aspiration of Australians in the big smoke to head to the bush. And we've seen for some decades now the sea change, and of more recent years, the tree change. But that growth will really accelerate now, not only because of the affordability benefits and the livability and lifestyle benefits, where some of the congestion and commute times and just the chaos of city living, as our cities have grown, have become almost a victim of their own success, and we're seeing people for lifestyle reasons move to the regional areas. But employability has now increased massively in the regions. That might have been a challenge. People thought, well, I want to move out of Sydney, but I like my Sydney job, or I like my Melbourne or Brisbane job. But in an era of work from home, suddenly we've decoupled work from location, and now people can live where they want to live and hold down the job they want to hold down, and the two can be separated geographically. So we're seeing regional population growth unlike we've ever seen. We've got regions now growing faster than the capital cities, and this will be the decade of regional growth in Australia. With that regional population growth comes regional investment. You get the construction boom, you get the infrastructure boom, you get investment of the government in the regions to accommodate that population growth, and that leads to economic growth as well. So it creates a virtuous cycle. Now, you want to make sure the population growth is sustainable, is managed, so that again you don't get priced out or congested out of the great regions that you have. But nonetheless, we will see that growth, and that does have that direct economic benefit. So there's good times in that regard. We surveyed Australians, again, through COVID, and we asked this question, have you considered moving homes as a result of COVID? Here is the results. Half of Australians plan on looking for a new home to rent or buy that incorporates more of what they value in the next year or two. One of the top motivations was extra space, an extra bedroom that can be used as a study in a work-from-home environment, or with the kids learning from home. But also, now that people don't have to be locked into where they currently are because they don't have to commute in as much, they're looking for a better or alternate location as well. So growth of the regions, change in the demographics, internal migration. Another factor that provides great opportunities for young people in the regions and young people in Australia generally is the ageing of the population and the ageing of our workforce. Now, if we go back 4 decades, we're talking about the 1980s, back then we had a population profile that used to be called a population pyramid, because as you can see, you had more people down the bottom, young people, fewer older people up the top, median age in the late 20s. Wind the clock forward 4 decades to this era, and the median age is now in the late 30s. That's the midpoint in our population. The pyramid has become more rectangular. In 4 decades' time, the median age will be in the 40s. There will be more people aged over 60 than aged under 20. And with the ageing population profile comes this ageing workforce profile. We, over the next decade, will see more exodus from the workforce, more of this retirement exit numerically than we've ever seen before, which creates great succession opportunities for an emerging generation as they move into the workforce. And if we think about the profile in our organisations or in the government sector, public service, other industries, we've got to recognise that we've got to work harder to attract and retain young people. But great opportunity for them coming into the workforce at a time of an ageing workforce and at a time of the growing regional areas. Now keep in mind, the reason that we have an ageing population is very much a good news story. We're living longer. People are younger longer. The longevity boom is phenomenal. This is life expectancy at birth by the decade. And you can see that not only are we living longer than we used to, but the line is continuing to point up. And so the generation of students today live longer even than their parents. They'll work later than their parents. They'll have more jobs in their lifetime than previous generations. So attracting, retaining and training them and equipping them for what will be a longer length of time in the workforce is critical at this point in their learning years. So demographic changes and generational changes, I've added to this the future of work. That's transforming the opportunities for young people as well. You know, with all of this change that we see, the demographics and the global trends and the generational shifts, we can feel a little bit like a guy I saw a photo of. He was the guy driving the truck that paints the line down the side of the road. And whenever he came to things in his way, he just sort of drove straight around it. He was a bit fatigued by, I guess, adapting to his world. That's not a great outcome on the line painting truck or in life. We can't just ignore the realities that are before us on the road. We have to respond to them. But I think there's probably even a better analogy as we think about the future. It's not as though we're driving down this road to the future, because I think it's changed. I think we're not so much tracking towards the future as the future is coming at us at an increasing velocity. The future is coming at us, the future of work, the future of these trends that we've discussed at often unknown direction. When you think about each of these elements that are transforming work and the future of employment for young people, technology and AI and robotics, global workforce flows and working from home, growth of the regions and the focus on well-being, entrepreneurialism and lifelong learning, the diversity of the workforce and the need to engage across that diversity. Probably the biggest transformation to work in a century we have just witnessed in the last few months, and that's working from home. It has transformed how we work, how we connect, and of course from where we work. We've surveyed Australians who have worked from home during COVID, and 4 in 5 of them expect it to be part of the new normal. Not working from home every day all of the time, but a hybrid approach to the future. We all worried that there'd be low productivity. We all thought people working from home would be a bit like Homer Simpson here, actual footage of him working from home. But it turns out that for every person who found productivity impaired, 4 times as many said their productivity improved in the work from home period compared to when they were in an office. And so working from home, where it leads to productivity and increased time saving with less commute, where it works for the employees and the employers are finding benefit, it's here to stay. Now, to what extent? In what way? We've surveyed Australians and again asked them their opinion, and what people are looking for will tend to play out in their employment pathway. And we found in our study that 14% want to continue what they had in the peak of the lockdowns, everyone working from home all of the time. And another 25% want to get back to what we used to have, everyone working from the office all the time. But you can see almost 2/3 of workers are saying, well, we want a hybrid. More days in the office than at home, but we want a bit of flexibility in it, and that's why the hybrid is here to stay. So we will have to get used to these new platforms, these technologies, collaboration through the digital time tracking or Zoom calling or interacting through the technologies and connecting anywhere, anytime. Now, it's the younger generation who are intuitive in the use of these digital skills and tools, and so they're well set up for this hybrid work for the future. Some of us are still getting used to some of those awkward moments, like on Zoom. I saw this meme. When everyone's getting off a Zoom call, you're struggling to find the lead meeting button. It's just you and your host. Just sort of those awkward moments. But we're all getting used to that, and I think we'll increasingly do so. So what we have at the moment is a transition of the generations in employment. We've got us 20th century generations. Gen Xers like me, baby boomers, we were shaped in the structured, linear, sequential times of the 20th century. And it's important that we bring that thinking and that experience and that expertise to our workforce. But at the same time now, we've got the 21st century generations entering the workforce, and indeed now the majority of the workforce. There are more employees in Australia born since 1980 than all of us born before 1980. So these emerging generations, now the dominant generations in the workforce, and they bring that 21st century thinking because these are the times that have shaped them. And having worked our way through the alphabet with Generation X and Y and Z, if you wanted to know the next one, the children of Generation Y, they're called Generation Alpha. And they've been born since 2010. They're at school, and within a decade they'll be in the workforce in a big way as well. So even starting to think about them is important. Now, what we know about the emerging generations is from a life trajectory perspective. They'll not only work later in their life in this knowledge economy, they'll be able to work not only through their 60s but into their 70s and beyond, should they choose to, and many will. But they'll have, because of that and because of shorter tenure, more careers, indeed more jobs in their lifetime. Our estimation is 18 separate jobs across 6 separate careers. Transition and change, upskilling and retraining will be the norm. Therefore, they really will be lifelong learners. And so, where they can get skills upgrades, where they can get some reskilling, not just by heading back to university, but by shorter courses and vocational education courses, that's going to be key for them and their future. Well, many of the jobs that they're entering now didn't exist when they began their schooling. And so many of the jobs that they will work in the future don't exist at the moment. It's that sort of environment. Here are just a sample of jobs of the future that are employing now. These are jobs that are available. But I don't want to give the impression that the future of work is just technological jobs. Because if you look at the data on this, and I've got here the data from the Department of Jobs, Federal Government Department, that looks at the fastest growing industries by employment. And this was their study of 18 months ago, looking forward over the next 5 years. So by 2024, healthcare and social assistance will have the biggest recruitment focus in terms of the numbers needed, and professional, scientific and technical services, education and training, construction, that's where the growth is. So yes, there's going to be these technological jobs, but the mainstream jobs of today, the dominant categories of employment or industries of employment currently, will also be the dominant ones over the next 5 years. Now, many of the roles within these industries will have more technology built into the roles, but they're mainstream sectors. Now, most of these sectors can be accommodated through university qualifications, but also through vocational learning as well. Let's move it from industry to occupation type, and here are the top 10 jobs by occupation type that will have the biggest growth over the next 5 years. Carers and aides, HR and marketing, health, specialist managers, ICT, technology there, education, legal, social, welfare, design, engineering, transport, logistics, road and rail drivers, construction, trade workers. So, the occupations across those industries, that gives a sense as to what the future holds. And again, all 10 of those jobs people can be equipped for through vocational learning, not just higher ed. Now, we've got a big focus on university pathways in Australia. I think that's excellent, and it does equip young people very well. But the future, as you can see from a demand perspective, isn't just about getting those generalist degrees, but also getting real job-ready skills. And so both pathways are important. And keep in mind that in an era of lifelong learning, if the young people want to get some job-ready experience from school and get some traineeship or apprenticeship or qualification vocationally, they can always articulate that into a university degree, or indeed go back and study a degree down the track. But certainly we are fast approaching some skills shortages in many of these areas now, and particularly in the regions. You're already seeing that. So the key focus for us as leaders is to observe these trends so we can give guidance and direction to young people and to our teams into the future. I wrote in a book recently on Generation Alpha. The key characteristic of a leader is foresight. The reason they can lead is that they see things not just as they are, but as they will be. Having that ability to look down the road is the reason that you can lead people down that path, because you've seen something of what is to come. And that's where data like this can be useful. Well, the demographics are changing, the regions are changing, jobs of the future are changing, where and how we work is shifting. Trend number 3 here is digital integration. And clearly, technology is transforming everything. Now, particularly as we think about the digital generations, Generation Z, the students in high school and tertiary that are moving into the workforce. I put up here some of our analysis on this. 95% of Generation Z young people own a smartphone. Keep in mind, the youngest of the Gen Zs are 12, and almost all of them from that age up own one. 74%, that's the average time Generation Z spend on technology outside of work and study. Their discretionary time, 3/4 of it, are spent on a device. And the challenge for us as parents and employers is to try to guide them towards that digital time in a productive sense. So it might be learning, so it might be growing, developing skills, not just entertainment on the screens, and also ensuring that they can develop not just the technology skills, but the people skills. You know, the reality for jobs of the future is that anything we can outsource to technology, we will. Anything that can be computerized or automated, will. But what computers aren't well designed to do is creative thinking and innovation and adaptation and interacting with people. The human skills, the thinking skills, the creative skills are eminently human. And so if we can equip them with those soft skills, the people skills, then these young people will have a great and bright future, and they will use technology as a tool, but be able to connect with people very astutely. I'll put up here this data. 73% of Gen Z would make a purchase based on social media recommendation. The social influence is very strong for them. And what platforms are they on? Put up here the top social media platform usage by teenagers. Number 1 is YouTube, number 2 Instagram, number 3 Snapchat. It's a generation that is visual, that is just a few clicks away from any piece of information on the planet. And if this is true of Generation Z in their 20s and teenage years, it's even more the case for Generation Alpha, born since 2010. As I said, I just finished a book on Generation Alpha, and there's a lot of free resources, white papers, and you've got an infographic in front of you, or I understand available, that talks a bit more about Generation Alpha and where they fit. The reason that Generation Alpha will be even more of an example of some of these trends I'm discussing with Generation Z is because of the age at which they have been transformed by technology. 2010, the year Gen Alpha began being born, was the year the iPad was launched, the year that Instagram was released to the public. The word of the year in 2010 was the word app, which tells us a lot about their times. Put up here, the age at which we're exposed to a technology or transformative event determines how embedded it will be in our psyche and lifestyle. And so these digital natives, only ever knowing the world of the device, the app, and the social media platform, are going to be even more of a digital generation than the Generation Z that we see currently. In fact, we have found that for Generation Alpha, those in their tween years, the number 1 search engine for them is no longer Google. They spend longer searching within the YouTube platform because they don't want to read an article about something, they want to watch a video on it. That's how they consume their content. They communicate through images and pictures. It's a world of memes and icons, emojis. It's interesting when you think about communication through human history. 4,000 years ago, we were communicating through pictures and hieroglyphics, and here we are back to it. So, the timeless means of communication unchanged. If I was to use 5 words to sum up the attributes of the emerging generation of employees, I would say that they're digital in terms of the tools that they use, and mobile in terms of when and where they can work and connect, social in terms of that influence channel, finding out about the jobs or the products, not just by what the advertising or marketing says, but what the peer group recommends. They're global in connectivity. and visual in terms of how they consume that content. It's not just that written form anymore. I see that a safety expert has come up with a new safety sign for this digital connected social generation to help them exit buildings safely. This one here, in case of fire, exit building before Instagramming about it. No Facebook updates and no selfies, got to keep it safe out there. Which brings me to the fourth of these 5 trends as we think about the future of work, and that is the importance of well-being. Indeed, the focus on well-being. And we have now a generation that expects to work in a place that will help them thrive, that will develop their skills, that will be a place of belonging and social interaction. If we think about work, it has to achieve more than just a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, paying the bills, covering the costs of living. We spend more than a third of our waking hours in any given week at work. We spend more than half of the years of our life at work. If our approach to work is summed up by this bumper sticker here, I owe, it's off to work I go, if that's the sum total, perhaps work's not achieving all it can possibly do. When you look at the dictionary definition of work, it's an activity involving mental or physical effort done in order to achieve a purpose or result. And that outcome, the motivation towards that outcome and the celebration that comes from achieving that is a key part of work and indeed life. We have found in our research and wrote a book on this called Work Wellbeing, that to some work is simply a job, but to many more it's a lifeline to social interaction, purpose and a place of belonging. And that's especially the case with this emerging generation that are looking for purpose and meaning, that are choosing careers and roles based on the values resonance they see with it, based on the employer brand, based on the impacts of the organisation and the impacts that they can make in it. We surveyed Generation Z at the point of finishing up their learning years and moving into their earnings years, and we asked, what are your greatest fears at this point in your life? And here are the top 5. Number 1, that I won't have enough money to live comfortably on and never being able to buy my own home. We're going to understand those anxieties as we see the costs of living rise. But it was the other 3 in the top 5 that were of real interest to me. Not reaching my full potential, being stuck in a job that I don't enjoy or find fulfillment in, not making a difference with my life. This was what was driving Generation. These were the worries. Potential, fulfillment, making a difference were the ambitions. And so as we think about guiding young people to a career, let's make sure the passion is there for the career. Let's not send them on a pathway just because we think it's very aspirational for us, if it's not actually where they feel a passion, a skill set and an ambition. If we have young people working in jobs that they're not enjoying, or sectors where they're not fulfilled, the work outcomes are substandard. Not sure what was going on with the tiling team there, but there was not a lot of passion in the work. And as for the production line, the outcomes were just making it confusing for consumers as they put the items in those packages. We found in our research, and I wrote it in this book, many young people leave jobs not because there's a compelling reason to leave, but because there is no compelling reason to stay. So if we're looking for better retention with our young people, let's think about how well we're communicating the vision, helping them see the bigger picture, celebrating the wins, the achievements that they make, creating a culture of belonging and connection so that they achieve not just task outcomes that they're enjoying, but they've got the social or team connection which helps them thrive. And let me conclude with trend number 5 here, and the importance of leadership. And for those that are in leadership and running your organisations, you of course have a key role that can make all of the difference in implementing some of these changes, in responding to these trends, and in ensuring the next generation will thrive in their workplace. Now, if we can understand the demographic shifts and the opportunities locally, if we can see the generational changes and the future of work pathways, if we can understand technology in its place, the importance of well-being and finding a role where people can be passionate about, we can lead all of that, then the future for our young people and our own organisations will be very bright indeed. But it requires a different sort of leadership. A lot of us were shaped in the hierarchical side, in the command and control model, the top-down approach, the chain of command. That's how it was when we began. Often you replicate what you experienced, but that authoritarian style doesn't really engage this next generation. We're looking for participation and collaboration. Who want a voice and a say and some input. They want to contribute. And so it's the leader who's got the flatter structure, who consults with the team, who involves others, who works on the connection, not just on the task outcome. That's where there's better attention and better leadership development of the team as well. We don't want to end up like Michael Scott, if you've seen The Office, that show, and he's famous for saying, firings will continue until morale improves. Probably not the ideal way to lead an organisation, probably not going to bring about a lot of passion or morale either. So I think when it comes to leadership, we've got to lead with our head. We've got to have the structural thinking. We've got to understand the systems. We've got to observe the trends. We've got to have a strategy to respond to the changes that we see. We've got to see with the eyes of our head, but we've also got to see with the eyes of our heart. It's not just the IQ, in other words, it's the EQ. It's what we sometimes, which is the emotional intelligence, but it's the GQ, the generational intelligence. Understanding that there are generational gaps. Understanding that starting a career in 2021 is different to starting a career in the 80s or 90s, or the 50s or 60s. Understanding that there's different concerns and priorities that they have in their era that we didn't experience at the same age or when we were their age. It's having the CQ, the cultural intelligence, understanding your organisation and effectively engaging to get that values alignment, that inclusion, that connection and that collaboration. I wrote here in this book that it's desirable that leaders bring intelligence, but it's essential that they exercise empathy. Leaders of head and heart are best placed to innovate amidst disruption and engage across diversity. You know, it's those two factors of our times. Fast-moving era, lots of changes, so we've got to strategically respond, and amidst the accelerated changes, we've got to innovate in that disruption, but also the workforce, generationally, culturally, gender diverse, and we've got to engage with them effectively. I put up some papers on that side if you want to get a bit more of the background on some of that from work wellbeing. But let me conclude, and I think there might be time for some questions if you do have any afterwards. Having the long-term vision in play is key for us all. We bring that perspective as parents, don't we? As it were, look through the lens of the eyes of our children, think about their future. Educators bring that and shape the future by impacting the next generation. And as employers, we have that same opportunity to think about what's next and to shape up that emerging generation, mentor and train them, so that even after we've moved to a different role, impacts will live on. And that's what I said here. The success of a leader is measured not by what they achieve in their tenure, but by what they set in motion, and by encouraging, equipping and enlarging the next generation. We are setting in motion ripples that will continue to have impacts in decades to come, and that's leadership well spent, and that's impacts worth having, and that makes a difference for the future. I wish you all the best in it, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate that. Now I'm going to give you some thinking time. So while I'm asking Mark a question, you don't have to listen to mine. I want you to think about your question. You can tell I'm a teacher, can't you? So I'm giving you some thinking time to think about your questions, and I'll come around with the mic. I'll be COVID safe, so I'll run over to you, and you don't even have to touch the microphone. There we go. That's problem solved, isn't it? So, Mark, I've got a question in the fact that obviously we're in Coffs Harbour, and probably a third of us are from Grafton, and we've got a lot of change happening in town at the moment. There's a lot of growth. There's quite a few people in the room here that were at the sod turning for the Wagulga Sports Complex this morning. and there was a few people at the trade hub opening at TAFE yesterday. So there's a lot of action happening here. How can employers in Coffs Harbour capitalise quickly on these changes? How can we get rolling quickly? What's the one piece? Because you've given us a lot of great advice. What's the one piece that can change that inertia?
Yeah, great question. I would say it's looking for the opportunities amidst the change. You know, we're very good at looking for risks. We're very good at being aware of what won't happen or what's a trap or being sceptical of change. But in any change, there are also opportunities. And some are sort of stepping back from it and bunkering down or doing it how they used to do it, while others are seeing the opportunities and stepping forward. And I think it's looking for the opportunities. I mean, these are new times. No one's got a heads up on it. No one's got the inside running as to what the future will be. No one predicted COVID, right? So you're as well placed as anyone who looks at the horizon and looks for those opportunities. I would say step forward into them, because as you leverage an opportunity, you create opportunities for others around employment, around growth, around setting a pathway for your sector. So I'd say don't just look for the risks, but look for the opportunities. And in times of growth and generational change and rise of the regions, there are so many opportunities coming your way.
Thank you. Question time. So I'm sure we've got some questions from the audience. I've got another one ready to go. Come on, put your hands up if you've got questions. Yes.
Hi Mark, and thank you very much for this evening, very interesting. What do you see the role of Asia post-COVID in the next sort of 5 years? As less people travel into Asia, either because they don't want to or they can't, and also less industry and individuals coming into the country, whether as students or as businesses?
Asia will continue to be huge for our future because we do look to our region, we look to our north now for business, for connection, through our own migration. China, India and the Philippines are the top three nations of immigration, or more Australians overseas born were born in Asia, and they're the top three countries there for migration. Then were born in Europe. So that's been a profound change in our migration pattern. And with the local diaspora of those that have come, whether recently, whether generationally back from Asia, means that there are incredible connections business-wise and family and community-wise into Asia. So there are great opportunities. And yes, closed borders for a while and uncertainty, but we will see travel bubbles come into Asia probably sooner rather than later, in the next year. And as COVID solves or calms down, I'm not saying months, I'm saying, a year or two, or maybe a bit more, there'll be more opportunities. But I think that connection to Asia is key. We are not culture exporters now. The West are not culture exporters, but in so many ways are culture importers. It used to be Hollywood or the innovation coming out of Western nations was where impacts were, and now so much coming the other way. I mean, TikTok being an example, and social media that came out of Asia, and so much more of that as well. So it provides great opportunities for us, and it'll continue to dominate our business and our population patterns.
Thank you. I'm going to put Steve on the spot because I'm walking towards him. He's a massive employer in the area, and I'm sure he's got some questions. Come on, Steve, be brave.
In particular, there's a massive shortage on the north coast of nursing and aged care. We're just about to open a 120-bed aged care facility and 170-odd independent living units. It's a real issue. How are we going to overcome that?
Yeah, it's a big challenge, and we've done a lot of research in the aged care space for some of the larger operators in Sydney, and the workforce challenge is probably the biggest that the sector faces. They've been reliant heavily in the capital cities on arrivals from overseas. You don't have that opportunity in the regions as much, and anyway, no one does with closed borders. And I think to be able to attract and retain locals can give you that better longevity and tenure anyway with employees. Probably the key would be to better communicate to young people the opportunities there and the pathway that aged care presents. I mean, into healthcare generally, you saw aged care, healthcare, it's the biggest industry and it's one of the biggest occupations. And if we can communicate to young people that vision of the carer pathway, the opportunity to make a difference, the skills that are transferable, then that's fantastic. The other thing is that it's not just young people. We've got multiple career changes now. As you saw, 6 careers in our lifetime. So maybe it's not just getting school leavers trained up, although that would be a key pathway, but the career changes, those getting back into the workforce, or those just looking to downshift from the previous role that they had. There are great opportunities if we broaden our spectrum across the age groups to cast the vision, show the opportunities, and train up and show the transferability of the skills in aged care. And if we can take that broader approach, we might get some outcomes.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks. Good question, Steve. I think we've all seen the Seek data recently. Last month was the highest number of advertisements on Seek since Seek came out 10 years ago. So that tells us that just advertising isn't enough to find the right employees. We have to be part of the solution as the employers. So the world's changed, and as employers we need to change with it to find and train and attract and retain high quality employees. We can't just advertise and hope for the best.
Mark, you mentioned some phrases there that what's common in our world, and a new phrase I've come across is, oh, it's a great job, great opportunities, but it's just not for me right now. The amount of times I've heard that from degree qualified young staff and also non-qualified staff is probably starting to do my head in a bit. But I just think there's endless jobs out there, that their stickability factor or their ability to get through a few hard days or a few hard months or the apprenticeship doesn't seem to be too strong.
Yeah, that is a challenge. And as I was saying earlier, you know, often there's not a push factor from a role. It's just that if we're not pulling them into that role, re-engaging with them, they will leave. You know, we've got an era of passive job seekers, but that's the reality. Everyone, in a sense, is a passive job seeker. You can have the apps on your phone, the job seeker type apps, and just be aware, even if you're reasonably happy where you are, you can just be aware of it. So it is a challenging market in which to retain staff, and that's why we have to always be on the front foot and not just think, well, they're in the role so they're here to stay, but to keep working on those pull factors. And we found 5 of them. It's the workplace culture. You know, people feel connected, feel belonging, they've got friends at work, that's a key part. You know, it's the purpose and vision. So if they're clear on the purpose, on the impacts, on the vision, and we celebrate the wins, you know, that's a great outcome as well. So the culture and the vision. Third is non-monetary rewards. You know, I mean, salary and remuneration matters, but often it's the recognition, it's the rewards, it's the training, it's the offsites, it's those sorts of benefits that don't cost as much monetarily, but make a big difference in terms of we value you, we want to invest in you, you know, you belong here. A 4th one is leadership, and having that sort of leadership that I discussed, that's engaging, that's open door, that's trying to equip and enlarge and train others, that leadership that looks out, not just, you know, powers down. And the 5th one was broad job description. So often people will leave a job, not because they don't like the boss or the company, they're just bored of the role. And so if we can, in a sense, rather than have them go somewhere else for a different job, give them a different job where we are, or broaden the job that we have, or give them an opportunity to move into a new role in terms of career trajectory or progression. So if we can get a broader job description, that'll help. And they're the top 5 that we found useful with young people.
Thanks, Mark. There's a lot in that, isn't there? I think we can all benefit from that.
Probably just answered the question a little bit, but I guess a lot of business growth and success has come around that recruitment and retention philosophy, but 6 career changes, 18 job changes. At what point do we need to shift our focus or mindset as employers around that retention not being so critical? But I think you just answered it in finding new jobs within the current organisation.
It's a great point that you make. You know, we need to change our own perspective, because we're unlikely, I mean, forget 10 years long service leave, that's very rare indeed if someone gets to that. 5 years is exceptional going, because the average employee is staying around 3 years per employer. So, you know, if you're hitting above that, you're doing well. That's sort of long term. And with young people, it's more like half of that, particularly in the early years. So what I would say is train, because whatever they're being trained, particularly young people, wherever they're seeing their skills are enhanced, their career is being developed, they will stay with you. Why wouldn't they? And as we often say to young people, what you learn in your early career matters a lot more than what you earn, because that is setting you up for the future. So if you're a learning organisation creating learning and training for your staff, they're more likely to stay. And if you get 3, 4 or 5 years, you know, that's shooting the lights out in this new era.
I'm not sure that the changing careers or pathways is something that's new. Can I do a quick survey? Put your hand up if you've changed jobs yourself in the last 10 years. Yeah, it's more common than we thought. Who's changed careers in the last 20 years or 10 years? Yeah, so I think the world's changed in that. It's not just the next generation coming through. I mean, Mark was jumping out of helicopters in his last career. I was a pathologist. We all changed careers.
Yeah, good.
Just a question for the Clarence, Coffs area. There's a lot of people here tonight who are leaders of industry, leaders of business, and it's unique to see all the diversity of the people that are here. How can we capitalise? What model have you seen work so that we just don't walk away and say, oh, that was great? How can we now network with the people that are here to find and to be able to progress what we've heard from you and what we've talked about with other people?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the first thing I would say to that is it's happening tonight. It's the very reason we've gathered, which is this collaboration across sectors. You've got school education with tertiary education and employers coming together for this careers hub, and that is so key. You know, we can get very sectoral or just industry focused, but the more we can cross-collaborate, the better, because it's not competitive and we've got a lot to share in that. For example, understanding young people, the schools are experts at that. Employers are scratching their head trying to understand this next generation. There's learning there, but the employers understand the practicalities of work that can give a bit of guidance to the careers advisors and teachers. So I think the collaboration is one thing, and the regions do it far better than the cities. And the other thing is think about those unique differences that you have in the regions and really, you know, make the most of that. I mean, one thing is collaboration, connection. One thing is another thing is just the relational networks that you have. The fact that people have longer connection in an area. All of that brings a lot of strengths. So I would really, you know, make the most of that, and it does set you apart from the cities, which are far more transient and less of those connections and networks.
We need to capitalise on the fact that we live in probably the most beautiful place in Australia. That's always a good attraction factor as well as the workplace.
Thanks. Thanks for your presentation, Mark. This will be a little bit long, but my wife's a school teacher, primary school age, so she's dealing with alphas, and she runs into a scenario where the parents are actually more interested in the fact that the child's mental health and well-being is looked after than the actual work they're learning, the things they're learning. And my thing is that being Gen X, I prefer to be Gen Y, but I'm not. My thing is empathy. We were bashed around by the baby boomers and dragged in, and, you know, work. And so we sort of lack a little bit of empathy. I want to know, how do we bridge that gap once these kids now come in the next 10 years? We're going to be bringing them into the workforce where they've been cuddled and looked after, which is great. Mental health is very important, but we end up where there's a massive divide between where we are, because we never had that, to where they are.
Great observation that you've made, and that is the case. You know, parents today are looking at holistic education. And think about the schools that are gathered here. You know, that's why if your parents are connected with your schools, you have students at these schools, because it's about the academic growth and the co-curricular, the character, the values, the faith base, the skills, empathy. You know, all of that is what parents are looking for, and that's why independent education is growing so strongly, because it's the whole child, it's the holistic education that they want, not just numeracy and literacy. You know, if you look at, and of course that matters because we're talking education, but it's also the other aspects. If you look at the last year, we surveyed parents for our Education Future Forum on this. So we had NAPLAN cancer last year. Parents were the least concerned about that. We have a shift away from standardised testing a little bit. Even a lot of uni students are getting in not based on their ATAR anymore. Parents are relaxed about that. They're not as focused on my schools and leagues tables and how's this school performing on numeracy and literacy compared to that school. So parents are definitely focused on that broader stuff, which is great because it'll equip those children with all those soft skills as well as the academic skills. But as for your question, well, how do we go where we didn't have that? I think it's a two-way street. You know, I think that we as employers and leaders need to understand the world of the Gen Alphas and Zs and understand that they are a bit softer than we experienced. You know, you do have to spend a bit longer in building the rapport and connecting with them. It's not just do it because I said so. Don't ask why, you know. I'm the boss, that's why. Your check is your pay, your paycheck is your thank you, all that sort of stuff. We do have to work a bit harder to engage with them. But on the other side of the equation, I think we do have to help them step up so that they can, you know, just get to it as well, because they are responding to baby boomer or Gen X customers or clients. They are moving the workplace that is a bit time poor, particularly in growth, and they don't have all the time in the world to chit-chat or discuss everyone's opinion. So if they can learn to step up and be more efficient and task-focused, if we can learn to be more empathetic, I think we can bridge it that way, and both generations will enhance their skill set. I think that's the ultimate outcome.
A bit more understanding. Last question. Thanks, John.
Hi Mark, thanks very much. It was very interesting. I really found quite a lot of empathy in everything you presented. So I'm from Youngster.co. We create jobs for tech-savvy youngsters, helping seniors with technology. We partner with libraries and the kids just love it. And BDC has the most students as part of our program. So we have now over 300 youngsters, and Steve, we can provide you future workforce if you need some in aged care, and especially when the kids find out that aged care is not all about you know, being next to a hospital bed. It's also about technology and how they can use the skills they have. My question to you is about being well prepared, and that's part of the BDC logo. And I'm curious, how do you see the world making an impact on Australia? The borders will open again, and how can we prepare our kids the best for the future?
Yeah, great question. What's the future? What do we need to be ready for? What's the next thing on the horizon or over the horizon? Well, firstly, as I began by saying, it's a VUCA world. Uncertainty, ambiguity, complexity. So to think about what's the world going to look like in 10 years is a long-range time frame these days. It gets foggier and foggier the further out you go, such is the speed of change. But we can get some indicators, so I think we need nearer-term planning. All right, that's my first thing. I think the idea of a 5-year strategic plan for an organisation is hard when it's hard to know what the next year holds. So maybe we need to bring in the timeframes a little bit. But the other thing is triangulation on the future. It's what we use in futurist analysis is you know, we've got, I've been sharing some of these trends, you know, growth of the regions here, and at the same time generational change, at the same time technological saturation. So if we triangulate on that, a new generation in growth area using technology, what does that mean? You know, and it's the confluence of trends that is so key, not just a singular trend like Coffs Harbour and Clarence Coast is growing, right? So what? You know, it's the nuance of that. It's growing. It has been growing for some years, but it's growing now not from retirement, but from younger families moving up here with children. So we're seeing growth also in education, right? Those sorts of things. So it's understanding the nuance of, yes, there's growth, what's the profile, what's the generation, what are the demands, what does that mean for the future? It's triangulating. So the more you can look at the array of trends, try to find those cross points, it gives you some sense of the future. Now, yes, there's uncertainty out there, but certainly you've got better clarity by looking at the trends and observing them, and particularly where they intersect, than if you don't do that at all. I'm sure you'll do that well, and you're people that do that because you're here tonight to hear all this sort of stuff. So thanks again for having me tonight. All the very best, and I'm sure your future here in Coffs will be bright indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was really appreciated. And while Janelle moves to the stage, she's going to do our vote of thanks and thank all the players involved with tonight. We're going to do a lucky door prize. Thanks, Jenna. Damien Irvine. Jennison? Oh, Damien. Well done. Enjoy. Don't drink it all at once. Okay, thanks, Jill.
Thanks, Nick. Welcome everyone and thank you for being here this evening. I just want to list through a vote of thanks for several groups and people that have made tonight possible. First of all, you, the businesses and the providers. We thank you so much for being open and willing and being ready to partner with our schools. I'm really excited that you guys are here and listening. So go home and think about it and consider what you can do and what we can do for you as well. To Mark McCrindle, we thank you for your insight and your collective wisdom and your research and sharing that tonight, and those on-the-spot questions as well. For the AIS team who initiated this project, who's funded this project and overseeing the project and holding the hands of the three principals as we do all the other things that we do as well and guiding us. So thanks Michael and team for that, and for Kelly and Darryl. Where I can't see you. So Bishop Druitt for hosting this evening, for your team, your staff that stayed back this evening, and for the hospitality students who fed us so very well. For Nick for emceeing and keeping us running, for the students and the families of our schools for entrusting their students to us. We're greatly honoured by that and we thank them. So I'd like you to express all those thanks with a round of applause.
Thanks,